Mara Jade is a fan-favorite Legends character. I did a separate video all about Mara and why she could never be brought into canon. I'll link to that in the description. This video is all about Timothy Zahn's thought on Mara Jade and expanding into the whole expanded universe canon split. If you don't know, Timothy Zahn is the creator of Mara Jade and Grand Admiral Thrawn. Zahn first introduced Mara Jade in 1991's critical expanded universe novel Heir to the Empire. This novel was my gateway into Star Wars beyond the core 3 movies. I was 8 or 9 when I first read it, and must have read it at least 5 times since then. This novel also introduced Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is part of canon now. We'll touch on that at the end, but for now, back to Mara Jade. In many interviews I've listened to or read, Zahn has shown very sincere appreciation to the audience for the reception of Mara Jade, as well as her impact on the expanded universe. Zahn created Jade to be a strong and fiercely independent woman in the Star Wars galaxy. I realize a statement like that in 2024 is cliche and reeks of pandering, but in this case, it's meant sincerely. Instead of creating her and having her be the best of the best and dominating Luke Skywalker, Zahn took the approach a true storyteller would take. He made her strong and capable, sure, but also misguided and flawed. He created a deep backstory and had a very rich arc largely planned out before he got the ball rolling. I don't think there's any way he could have had every last detail for how far her story would go, and some of the details he did have would likely have changed along the way, but you can tell by following her trajectory, this wasn't taken lightly. He also had the larger Star Wars narrative in mind. Jade had to fit into the story that George Lucas created and stand toe-to-toe with the heroes audience had loved for over a decade without overshadowing them. He wanted her journey to be one of evolution, where the established lore would influence the character and not the other way around. He based her arc on a key Star Wars ideal, that of redemption. He took his time unfolding the story and collaborated well with other creators who would utilize the character. He knew her journey had to be difficult, and he was correct. Without a difficult journey, fans would not have accepted her into the fold. I see many people calling the Star Wars timeline the new canon when it was bought by Disney in 2012. Canon didn't change then. The expanded universe was never actually canon. I've gotten a lot of comments pushing back on this in many other videos. I am by no means knocking the expanded universe. I love those stories. For many years, those were my Star Wars. I still love many of the story arcs and characters. The creators of those books and comics did a wonderful job growing the franchise, growing the universe, and keeping true to George Lucas's vision, at least for the most part. There's even a shockingly low amount of major conflicts in the stories for how long they went on and for how many people got involved. There's also the fact that George Lucas's outline for this sequel trilogy that's floating around online would have conflicted with many of these Legends stories, kind of furthering my point here. As much as we all love the expanded universe, Legends, whatever you want to call it, they were never the official storyline. This also shouldn't deter you from reading them. A good story is a good story. The reason Disney made this differentiation between Legends and canon was for them to be able to tell a cleaner story without having to worry about some stories that came before that weren't the actual core canon. I know many people have issues with the story since Disney took over. I don't love all of their decisions either. I'm just talking factually. I've also seen for years people thinking Disney didn't embrace the expanded universe fully to not have to pay authors royalties. This is also untrue. When you work for a major franchise, you typically don't own the stories or characters that you're working with. I'm sure everyone's deal was a bit different. If I got hired to write for Star Wars tomorrow, which would be an incredible dream come true, and I created a character that people embraced as much as they did Mara Jade, which would be unreal, I'd have no legal right to that character. It would be owned by the franchise owner. Same deal if I went to work for Marvel or DC. The new guy writing a Spider-Man comic does not get royalties on Spider-Man. Their individual deal would probably see some monetary compensation for units moved, but they do not own it. When it was announced there would be new Thrawn content, Timothy Zahn was contacted, but not because he owned Thrawn. He said himself that he was honored to be approached and was thrilled to continue on with the character, but Disney Lucasfilm did not have to include him. I, and many other fans, are glad that they did, of course, but the company owns the characters, not the author. You can push back on this all you want, but a fact is a fact. I don't know Timothy Zahn's particular deal, but I did see him in person at at a panel when it was announced that Thrawn would be coming further into canon, and he said this exactly. When the expanded universe was deemed Legends, Zahn expressed mixed feelings. He saw Disney's stated reason as a practical business move, streamlining the narrative to make way for new content, but he was disappointed his characters and stories were not part of that direction, at least not at the time. I talked about Thrawn coming back and Zahn being involved. I don't see how Mara Jade can fit into canon at this stage without a major overhaul, one so big that she would hardly be the character we all love. Zahn has expressed interest in working with Lucasfilm to find ways to get her to fit. It's not impossible, I just don't see it as likely. It also feels like a no-win scenario. We love Mara Jade, we'd love to see her in canon, but to accomplish that, she would have to be changed so much that long-term fans would be disappointed in all the changes. Canon, expanded universe, Legends, whatever, Mara Jade has had and continues to have an impact on the franchise for fans. More than 10 years since her stories were deemed Legends, and she's still a fan favorite. Zahn has expressed gratitude for the fans and the continued support. Along with being a great creator and showing gratitude at coming back to the Star Wars, Zahn has always shown respect for the fans of his work. If you see him at conventions, he always carves out a minute to talk to fans and conducts himself as a professional. I know a lot of this sounds like I'm putting words in another man's mouth. That is not my intention. I do not mean to misrepresent him in any way. I gathered this information from multiple sources and wrote down my understanding of his sentiments. In addition to the interviews I've been finding, I've seen him personally at panels at various Comic-Cons and was even able to talk to him, though very briefly, in an unofficial capacity at Rhode Island Comic-Con a couple years ago. I'm throwing this disclaimer out there in case I misunderstood or got bad information along the way. Despite the word on the HoloNet being that George Lucas himself didn't care for or accept Mara Jade, given her relationship with Luke Skywalker that Jedi should not have, her creator and fans alike love her. I've said on this channel many times that George Lucas's word is law when it comes to Star Wars, and I stand by that, but I can't help but like Mara Jade, her impact, and her character development. Check out this video next for more Star Wars lore.